President Trump making an announcement moments ago at a White House event saying that he has been taking hydroxychloroquine for about a week and a half now.
The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it.
Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
Did the White House doctor recommend that you take that? Is that why you're taking it?
Yeah, White House doctor. Didn't recommend. No, I asked him, what do you think? He said, well, if you'd like it. I said, yeah, I'd like it. I'd like to take it. I want the people of this nation to feel good. I don't want them being sick. And there's a very good chance that this has an impact. So I'm taking the two, the zinc and the hydroxy. And all I can tell you is, so far, I seem to be okay.
The president adding that he has had no symptoms for coronavirus and is taking the drug for precautionary measures. This news breaking just recently. Greg, let me go to you first because you cover this. You've drug for many weeks. We've all read about it. We had the hopes for it, the controversies about it, and now the president dropping this news into the news cycle at about 4:30 this afternoon.
I love it when he says, yeah, just very casually, I'm taking hydroxychloroquine. I would have told you sooner, but you didn't ask. And that was perfect. Again, the most transparent president ever. And it's important to note that his explanation was incredibly nuanced. It's about who you give it to and when. He is correct. There are a lot of people taking this who know what they're doing. I've talked to doctors, many people that you know, and they were talking about it as a prophylactic, 2 months ago. He was also really dead on about that last study, which the media glommed onto because they wanted that drug to be a failure because they want Trump to fail. So they played up this study in which the drug was given to people who were essentially near death. And so you couldn't tell what was going to happen if it was too late. When you get this drug to people who can tolerate it, I don't think you can have any kind of heart condition or arrhythmias and things like that. If you can take it prophylactically, and it's 40 years, it's FDA approved, it's been around for decades. It's one of those things that if it's available to you and you can take it, you do it. That's a prudent way of looking at it.
Dagan, there was an FDA warning about what Greg was talking about, that if you had any sort of heart condition, you should not take it. I don't have the FDA document in front of me. But there are also people who have conditions like lupus that take this drug because it does help them. That is proven to help them. And they need the drug, and a run on this drug by people who are trying to prevent getting coronavirus, when we know that actually, washing your hands and not touching your face is probably the best way. There is a concern by people that have lupus that if there's a run on this drug, doctors are being pressured to prescribe it to people who don't necessarily need it yet. I'm not saying that people shouldn't take it. I'm not saying that at all. But there is a concern by those who are actually sick.
Right. If you're not sick and your doctor tells you no, don't take it, please listen to your doctor. Leave it to President Trump for doing a giant cannonball, boom, boom, right into the middle of the news cycle. A belly flop is what the Wall Street Journal always calls it, because we got this incredible news on a vaccine from Moderna that they announced early this morning. Right. That's why the market was up so much, that the immune responses in some of the healthy volunteers who were vaccinated in a clinical study, that it was induced, so they had a healthy response to it. And this is one of the first vaccines that we're going to hear about. Moderna, Pfizer are working on vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Sanofi, just to name a few. But this is what's going to dominate the news cycle. And in terms of hydroxychloroquine, there have been some observational studies about it, and there was one that was done in New York City that was released just not long ago, like a few weeks ago, and it basically found no impact from the drug on, I think that it was, I'll find it, but anyway, it was there was no impact on people who were sick, not positive and not negative, but we're waiting for longer term trials to come out.
Mm-hmm. So that news about the Moderna vaccine broke before the markets opened today, Juan, and it was one of the reasons that the market, I don't know what it finally finished at, but it was around 1,000 points up. So you have that good news on that vaccine that could possibly be available for emergency use by fall if everything goes well. Should caveat that. But this debate about hydroxychloroquine somehow became a red versus blue issue, and I can't imagine this is not going to stir that up again. What do you think?
I don't know about red versus blue, but I think it's a Trump issue. You know, it's all about him. And what's interesting to me in this breaking news is I guess he's worried about getting sick, and more so than I might have appreciated if he's been taking this for a week and a half, because that would even be before there was concern about Vice President Pence, and then there was one of his aides, and of course the Vice President's press secretary who tested positive. The Vice President didn't test positive, but he self-isolated because of his association contact with his press secretary. So I think the president is worried, and we know, as Jesse likes to remind me, that the president is a germaphobe, but he didn't wear the mask. I don't know about the hand washing. Someone told me the other day that even now the White House mess is closed. I think, Dana, you would appreciate that that's pretty severe for people who work at the White House, that you have to do takeout. So I think that there's a sense at the White House that things are maybe more severe than the president likes to tell the American people in terms of worrying about this pandemic. And to pick up again on what Dagan was talking about, there's good news about the vaccine, but if you look at the big hospital studies about the use of hydroxychloroquine in New York City, if you look at the VA study, if you look at academic studies, everybody comes back and says there's no evidence that this is going to have an impact, a positive impact, that it has real efficacy in terms of preventing you from getting disease. But apparently the president believes his own spin, because you're not getting this from any government or academic authority.
Well, there
You're
have
getting it from
been,
doctors.
and I'm not saying that anecdotal evidence is everything, but anecdotal evidence does exist, Jesse, where some people say that if they weren't severely sick and they took it, it did help them get back. But the other thing, Jesse, is that the president says that he asked the doctors said, okay, we can try it. It's like, you're okay to try it. We do know one thing, and that the White House medical doctors are responsible to make sure that the president is in the best health possible, because he is the leader of the free world and the commander-in-chief. So before everybody runs away with this, like as a crazy town, like I do think that the doctors saying, okay, we can do that, we should have some confidence in them.
Yeah, Juan's acting like the president just announced he was making meth in the East Wing. Like, this is not some, like, radical cocktail. The president's like, I'll take some uppers and some downers, maybe a shot or two. Like, Juan, the doctor of the White House prescribed this. Like, this is under the administration of medical
Wait, Jesse, he
professionals.
said he could do it. He didn't prescribe it.
Same thing.
Okay, well, he administered it, Juan. What's the difference? He didn't go to CVS to get it. Like, you're splitting hairs. If the president asked the doctor, and the doctor says, yeah, what's wrong with that? I mean, everybody's acting like, you should have seen the media when he made the announcement. It was like, when your daughter comes home from college and, like, at dinner, she's like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And it's like that parents are like, whoa, like, what? You've been home for a week and now you tell me? Like, come on. This is like, it's an anti-malarial drug that people take all over the world. It's been taken for, 40 to 60 years? And it works for some, it doesn't work for others. I think we're making a little too big deal out of this, like we always do when it comes to hydroxychloroquine. I don't understand why it's been politicized like it has.